and welcome to another edition of the GEB America podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Gunn, and with me today is my friend of many years now here, actually, and a great legacy, living life. That's who he is, a leader, mentor, speaker, and a host as well of a podcast. I'm going to let him tell about that here shortly. Marquess Dennis, thank you so much for being here. We're so glad to have you on the podcast, my friend.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the speakers and not necessarily those of GEB America, Oral Roberts University, or their employees. This program is not intended to offer investment, financial, medical, legal, or any other advice. Viewers should consult a subject matter professional regarding any such matters.
Hey, it's truly an honor, Stephen. You know, you're one of those people that it's like, when you call, it's like, yes, I will do it. Whatever, I will do it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. This has been one of those that I have been wanting to do for a while, and it's been great to be able to line up and get you here on the podcast. So let's start off here, kind of telling a little bit about. We'll keep it on the topic of the Birthright Living Legacy, which is your organization you and your wife co-founded.
Yeah.
And I love the powerful mission. How has your own personal story influenced that direction of the values organization there?
So my own personal values of the story of how this came about was I was a young man who, you know, had fathered children, and I was in that weird space of wanting to be a better father, be a better husband, be a better man, but nobody had ever explained to me what that means. You know, it's a quantitative, not a qualitative kind of a situation is what I was taught. And so when I learned that there's qualitative data, meaning that there are things that you have to catch, things that you're not going to inherently know. It's not just the time, it's quality time, you know, but what does that mean? And quality times mean something different to everyone. So, you know, Birthright Living Legacy was formed out of that. You know, we believe that, you know, fathers are actually essential to strong families and thriving communities. You know, society has downplayed just the importance, you know, of the fatherhood role, you know, but the truth is fathers provide structure, stability, and guidance that no one else can.
Right.
And so we exist as an organization to celebrate and equip and empower fathers through mentorship, workshops, you know, doing things in the community, and even giving fathers the tools and resources to fully engage with their children. You know, so when fathers show up, you know, families flourish. And our mission is to restore the value that fathers bring to parenting, you know, just because it's important, you know, just to be able to know that, you know, they're creating that lasting legacy for future generations.
Well, and I know, and I've heard you even talk about this before, but I know that like even the way that we as men particularly, but just as children, is the way that you interact with your earthly father can shape the way you see your heavenly father. When you talk about, you know, the relationship of Jesus and that whole concept, how has that been for you, that relationship, that progression or that obstacle, that road? How is that for you?
Yeah. I mean, so this is the thing that people don't often realize is like, you know, God is not in physical form such as man. And so Jesus's representatives come through man. And so if you have a person that helped create you, was a part of the just pure gestation of you being becoming a being, and that person is not around, or that person is abusive, or that person is not interested in you, that person is someone that is, let's just say, reluctant to be in relationship, it becomes really hard to trust others, to be close to others, and to value this idea that there's a heavenly father that somehow supersedes this guy. You know, it's just like working for a company. You know, if you have a bad manager at that company, it's hard to then still believe that this is a great company, because you're like, if this is the guy or gal that you sent to represent your company, if this is who you promoted to be in leadership into this company, then I have to assume they are a reflection of you. And so that's what it looks like in parenting when you're talking about fathers, when you're talking about a heavenly father, when you're talking about the church construct, it's, hey man, I thought my life was supposed to look this way. God is, and it's a twofold thing, because, a lot of churches teach the genie version of God, where they're like, hey, you just pray about it and then he'll just give it. And that's just not how it works.
It's not.
I mean, any responsible parent is not going to give their child everything they want. And that's the same thing with a heavenly father. Is like, if you start to understand this relationship, meaning father-child, like as a father, when you start to understand your role, like the God relationship starts to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You're starting to be able to see, like, oh, I see why you would not give your child. I mean, somebody asked me a couple of years ago that what if you got everything that you prayed for? And what a compelling question, because it's like, man, if I was a teenager getting everything that I prayed for with no context, with no full wisdom, no understanding, where would I be right now?
Yeah.
Even as an adult, I mean, thinking about Crystal as my wife, I could not imagine if I would have gotten some of the people I prayed for, because I prayed for them at a distance, not really knowing their character, not really knowing who they were, their relationship with God, their family, none of that. It was just like beauty. Yes, I want that because everyone else desires that, and I want to be coveted by all these men. That was the fullness of my understanding. Well, what if I would have actually gotten that?
Yeah.
What if I would have married a woman that would have ended up with an OnlyFans, because that's what I valued in her, and I taught her that was the only thing that was valuable about her, was her looks and her beauty, and then she feels like she must sell herself in order to be of value. Like, as a leader, I would have been a horrible husband. But again, that goes back to that relationship. But being able to have a heavenly father, but also being able to have earthly stand-ins, or what we call in birthright step-ups, those coaches, those pastors, those people in the community that help come alongside to help you raise, those people are vital, because it helps you to see the big picture of God versus just that monotheistic idea that you have in your household. So
Well, one of the inspirations of my question there about that was because for me, like I'm only a child, but I have 5 brothers and sisters in heaven. My parents did have 5 miscarriages before I was born. And so I understand and respect, and I was told that at the right age to understand that I was basically a miracle child, to my parents. And so I always like to say I never was, splurged or treated, overly with things, but with the love of my parents, it was abundant. And so that shaped for sure my framing of reference of what God's love was, that being accepted and being valued in that way made a huge difference for me. And I know from your story, I know that you guys, you've walked through both sides of that for yourself, and living that out. And I know that, there is a value brought when the perception, the filter we see the love to be received isn't just flippant, right? But it's it's treasured.
And honestly, this is the crazy thing, Stephen, is those. So we had 2 miscarriages in 10 months. The crazy thing about that is, it's like, it goes back to that verse where it's like, he'll use everything for his good, right?
Yes.
And you're just like, well, how could you possibly, right? So real story that happened. When we lost our first child, that was the first time I had ever experienced a miscarriage in marriage. Growing up as a guy in the hood, in the inner city of, whatever nonsense I was involved in at the time, I perceived miscarriages as like a blessing. It was like, oh man, dodge that bullet, because I had no context of what was going on. And I used to think to myself, man, I'm glad I didn't, I missed that. But when I had the first one with my wife, I mean, I was stuck at my desk, like in zombie mode. And I just remember not being able to move, not being able to anything. And my boss came up to me, Pastor Tim at the Tulsa Dream Center, came up to me. I was working there as a program director at the time. He goes, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, what do you mean? I got to work. And he was like, you need to go home. Like, this is not okay. But I didn't even realize that I was now experiencing what was actually happening. What actually happened is the loss of a life. And so one of those things, like in the book Almost Father, where they explain how men and fathers are actually impacted by miscarriages and abortions and things like that, where you don't even think about it. You only think about it from the women's perspective, but those children belong to you as well.
Yeah.
And so what we did was, my wife and I just felt led to, continue to host our fatherhood meetings. And so what I did was I got on a live while we were still in the hospital. This is crazy. We're still in the hospital. Crystal's got a blanket over her shoulder. It seemed very insensitive at the time, but what I was trying to do was I couldn't imagine for the next 9 months my wife having to answer, no, we lost it. No, we lost it. No, we
remember
over
that.
and over and over.
I remember
So I
that.
made a live and I said, hey, we're going to talk about how this is affecting us, as men. We had 15 dads show up just specifically to talk about the miscarriages that they've had.
Wow.
And one particular dad said, hey, man, I just wanted to come because I've been carrying this story for about 15 years now, and I've never been able to talk about it because it's my wife's story. And this was the first time he was able to be validated to say, no, that was your child too. Your dreams, your hopes, your inspirations, your aspirations for that child. Those things went away when she lost hers.
Yeah.
But she is who he has to be there for. But he didn't realize it was okay for him to process those feelings as well and to feel that. And so that's why it's so important that we fully understand, what is it that we're supposed to do when these things called community? Because when we talk about community, that could mean anything, right? Well, it actually has a purpose. Community being churches, small business, and school districts, because everything requires a village. God created everything on a village mentality, and a village means 4 grandparents, 2 parents, brothers, sisters, uncles, cousins, and neighbors. And when you tack that on to the small businesses, churches, and the school districts, now you actually have a community that can sustain and function within itself.
Yeah. That's good. Now, let me ask you this. So what would you say has been the most surprising lesson that you've learned while leading this Birthright Living Legacy, or something maybe that shifted the way you thought about legacy or the community engagement aspect of it?
Honestly, just being able to have the hearts of the fathers, just being able to create a safe place where men can come and just take that exhale of, because the pressure is real. And, you don't get to mitigate your pressure when you come to a birthright meeting, but we help you understand what that pressure is. We teach a principle called be the thermostat, not the thermometer. Set the temperature, don't check it.
That's right.
Because when you're checking the temperature, you're going to wear yourself out trying to try to feel what it's going to be. But just understand that if you set it at 70, depending on how big your room is, depending on how much trust you've lost, depending on how many things, hey, it's going to take a while for that room to get to that temperature. And so being able to have the ability to share with fathers, but also with my vulnerability by explaining to them, hey, I haven't made it. I'm just going to tell you my mistakes. I think that's one of the biggest things that has happened is, the dads that I have been able to encounter and be in relationship with, the vulnerability that we get to experience by having real conversations of saying, hey, listen, this is where I messed up. This is what's currently happening. And then, sometimes I'll tell them about an argument or something that I'm having with my wife, and they'll be like, oh, yeah. And I'll be like, yeah, this was yesterday. And they'll be like, what? And I'll be like, yeah, yesterday. Like not even 24 hours ago. We just had this argument. And I was right. I was absolutely right. But then having to explain to them why I still had to eat crow and apologize at the end. It's because I'm setting the culture. I'm setting the temperature. It's not so much that it was great that I was right about the point. The problem was I was right about the point, but the method in which I delivered the point was damaging and it was harmful. So helping people to see that and having a father be able to receive it. not just hear it or try to defend it, but to receive it. That's been the biggest joy for me, the impact in just having the influence and being trusted with the hearts of these fathers. Because you can't see a dad as a seed. You have to see a dad as a whole orchard, because what you say and do to that father could potentially affect his entire family line from that point.
Wow. That's a powerful picture, Marquise. That's wow. You're right. I love that. Man, the seed in the orchard. There's just. I saw a whole picture with that when you said that. Just like
when my past president of the board, Aaron Wiggum, when he said that to me, when I tell you paradigm shift, because it was like, wait, he said, you can't speak to the seed. You can't speak to a father as a seed. You have to see the orchard in him. And I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
Because the Bible says that I am twisted in the way that my father is twisted. And so the generations that come after, if you don't untwist, if you don't figure out what is happening, you are going to unknowingly affect your family for generations to come.
Right. No, that's good. Wow. Talking about generations, how have you seen this help? Maybe with either through speaking, through the podcast, whatever. How have you seen that be able to help engage with the younger generations, and what maybe are some strategies or some techniques or things you've seen really work well, and what have you kind of seen come out of that?
Oh yeah. So I do a talk called Be a Human Being, Not a Human Doing. And what that does is that helps. I use it sometimes it's mostly for people that are trying to implement, what do they call those, the mentorship programs and things like that, helping those that help others. Right.
Right.
And so sometimes I go to churches or groups and things like that. And I teach this curriculum, and I teach it in if I'm in a church setting, I'll teach it in a cross theory. If I'm not, I'll teach it a different way. But in a church setting, I teach the cross as a physical layout of what we're supposed to do. And if you do it the proper way, it'll change everything, right? So the cross, you have to reach up to the generation that came before you. So that's where the wisdom, that's where the experience, that's where the knowledge comes from, right? Then you reach out. So you reach out to the generation you're in. So these are your peers. These are your friends. These are the people that are your age, that are doing the things that are important, but also pouring out.
Yeah.
And this is where anything that operates works well. Because again, if we take that and extrapolate it back to the village, grandparents, parents,
right,
children, this is how it works, grandchildren, so on and so forth. So when you have that mentality of understanding, like if I ask you, I say, hey, Stephen, who are you reaching up to in the generation that came before you? Who are you talking to make sure that you are being accountable, not in a sense of, hey, let me tell you all my problems and you fix them, but who are you being accountable to say, hey, man, these are my thoughts. These are my ideas. This is my vision that I have for my family. Is there something that I'm missing? Is there something that I could be overlooking? Is there something that my heart is desiring that I'm not seeing? Because I have one of my mentors. He is very particular. He's like, if you give me a vision, it better be absent of ego, pride, or money. If either one of those are present, I'm done. And so I have to make sure that I actually have a vision, that I have a plan that is not being led by ego, pride, or money. And so when Stephen is talking to that level that is above him, that's where you're going to get a lot of that peeking in, because they know, they've seen, they've come, they've conquered. But then the reaching out, when I say, okay, who are you going to battle with? Who are you in community with? Who are you actually doing life with? That's a very different version. You know, because, the grandparents aren't going to be there day to day. They're not going to be there having your conversations, but I will. We can sit down and, barbecue, families play together, that whole nine, and we can do life. So that's a very different version. And that's so important, because when sin happens, when anger happens, when things that are bad that happen in a relationship, especially a marriage, more times than not, I can say, or you can look at that man and say, who's close enough to you to notice that something has changed? And more often than not, you will find that that man is really actually lonely. And so he's lonely because he's just pretending to be this guy in front of everyone else. Because, they say 10 years or 25 years ago, every man had at least 15 or had at least 10 close friends. That was considered a well-friended man. Whereas now you can't find 10 men with one close friend.
Whoa. Wow.
Now let's think about that.
Yeah.
Stephen, if you are my one friend, right? I got to call you in good times. Got to call you in bad times. Got to call you when I want to go fishing, when I go bowling,
Right.
when I want to do things with the family, when I feel, like telling a joke. So imagine how much pressure I just put on you. And that's not even counting what you have to do with your family.
Right.
So then when Stephen doesn't reply to me, I'm devastated. And this is what you see with the young people today, where you're like, why are you so up in arms about somebody unfriending you? To them, their whole life is coming down because that is their one person. Whereas before, we used to have tons of people around. If Stephen wasn't available, I'll call Carl. If I can't call Carl, I'll call, AD or whatever, and keep on moving. And then we will find somebody or we'll all get together, whatever the case may be. And then pouring out. Now, this is where it really gets important. And this is the part that really gets skipped over. The pouring out is not necessarily to your children. Because if we're in community, Stephen, if we are in a neighborhood, if we have shared values, what's supposed to naturally happen that we've lost? Your son is not supposed to like you. Guess who he's going to like? He's going to like me. He's going to say, oh, man, Marquess is cool. He's got all the things. But guess what? My kid's not going to like me either. He's going to say, man, if you would be more like Mr. Stephen, he would. Because we are in community, they're going to get the same information, but it's because we have those shared values. That's why pouring out is so important, is because now I may notice that your son has taken an affinity and he can hear me a little bit more, but I know what he's actually struggling with because me and you are in community. Right. So I'm going to be able to tailor that information. And then as a father, as a concerned father, I'm going to say, hey, I talked to your son, just so you know, these are some things that you could do to really kind of connect with him.
Yeah.
And he's going to be like, man, my dad has been getting so much better. And I'm going to say, man, that's crazy. Keep on going. You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's right.
That's how we used to do with teachers. This is how we used to be able to get teachers the inside information of how to really reach our children, that kind of thing. But now we just drop our kids off to our teachers and say, hey, you raised my child. Yeah. And as Bodhi Bacham says, we send our children to Caesar and we wonder why they come back Romans. Yeah. So making sure that you have all three of those present in any man's life is going to be huge, because those are the things that help, one, keep us accountable, two, help us keep vision, and three, make sure that the people that are coming after us, they're not starting over. Imagine if me and you played Monopoly and every time you went around, you had to start over. You had to give all your properties up. You had to give all, you know what I mean? That would be frustrating after a while. And that's what's happening when you have no grandparents, no parents, and you have some child that's trying to make it based on the internet, based on this idiot box, and based on the worldview versus a worldview. And so that's why it's very helpful to be able to have these things and coaching these men and parents to understand, hey, it's not that everything you have to say is so just valuable, but what it is saying that if you don't pass on that legacy, if you don't give that, I like Dr. Ken Canfield said it this way. He said, every grandparent is the curator of their family museum. It is their responsibility to help the children to see how their family got to where they are today.
Wow, that's good. No, as you're talking, I was the example that came to my mind. I'm in the world of athletic coaching. I coach my boys with baseball and stuff, and it's funny because I have my older son who's 9. There's 3 primary coaches. I'm supporting coach with that group, and so I'm out there. I'm play baseball in college. I know my stuff, but it's funny that sometimes some of the kids really resonate with me. I can tell them something, and they're like, yes, Coach Steven said that. I'm going to do that. and their dads are like, I've told them that 15 times. Like, how come you say it like once or twice and like, oh, I gotta do it right. I'm like, it's the voice, it's the voice of familiarity, and making sure that something, authority level sometimes comes in, and it's totally different. And so even my own son, I totally see that sometimes. Like, I'll tell him stuff, and then the other coach comes over and he goes like, he does it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
how in the world?
We used to be really excited about that, whereas now parents get really up in arms and they're like trying to force feed their kids. But what they don't understand is like they now are cheated the village process. But if they get to learn it, then what that does is that teaches them my dad is not the only person I can get positive and encouraging information from. If I can get it from here, then I can get it from this coach. What really is happening is just like advertisement, right? It takes touch points. It takes at least 4 touch points before somebody picks up something. So you planted that seed and they're watering. They just happen to get the harvest.
Yep.
You planted it, so who cares?
Right.
Married, you can't be mad that your wife got the point because she watched something on TV. It was an idea that you came up with. You just gotta let it go.
That's true.
Because in sales, that's what they teach you, right? In
That's
sales,
right.
they say make sure the customer thinks it was their idea.
That's true. That's very true. When you have a leader that can do that within a room of other leaders, and all of a sudden, they entered the room being the one with the idea, and you leave the room with everybody feels like it was their idea coming out, and you're like, that's a win.
Yeah. And then trust, everything moves at the speed of trust as well. If I had a homeless guy come and tell you something, and then John Maxwell came to you and told you the exact same thing, you would take Maxwell's version. You know what I mean? Like, even though it might be, because the trust and the respect for him is different. And that is very important to understand, is like, there are natural cycles where your children are not going to like you. They just aren't. It isn't, there's nothing you can do. And there's honestly no reason for you to attempt to try to make them like you. The point is so that they can understand that whether you like me or not, you need to get this done. And that is what helps them to understand discipline and understand that their feelings don't really have anything to do with what happens when you get into the school. If that teacher tells you that this assignment is what you're going to do, that's what you're going to do. Outside of going against your morals in some sort of abusive way, but that's what you can expect out of school. That's what you can expect out of servicing customers and so on and so forth. You're preparing them in the way that they should go, not doing it for them, because that's not going to help them.
So in that example, I think what I'm hearing you say, I can restate it again, essentially for our listeners and viewers, is, if you're in a season where you feel like your kids are just nothings, you're speaking to an iron wall, make sure that you have your community around you, the people that are going alongside the same way, because that out of that community, out of that relationship that you have with your other families, things that and maybe they might be able to speak into the child's life, and that, because of it not being your voice but somebody else's, they may open up and go, oh man, I should think about that. Or I think somebody said that to me recently, but I don't know who. Oh, my mom or my dad or whatever, but just another reminder that if we try to isolate and do things alone, it makes it really hard.
It really hard. And then you're fighting with the child, not the process. I always teach people this way. When I've led teams of 50 plus, is like, listen, we attack processes, not people. Because if you're saying Joe did the thing, now Joe has to, whatever. But if we say, hey, we've noticed that when we do X, it equals Z, and then you don't understand what happens on the end over here, and that messes up the process. Well, now we don't have any feelings or emotions in it. It's like, hey, we do this because of this, we do this because of that, and then, hey, well, how can we finagle this to where everybody is in a better situation? And then now we've essentially allowed our children to help us cook dinner, and so they're going to eat it a lot easier when they have a part or play a hand in cooking it versus just dictating all the time.
Right. Woo, boy, I could chew on this stuff for a while. There's a concept, because this is near and dear to mine. We actually used to be part of a another show I did here in the same studio we're in right now, actually, that had to do with legacy. And so the name Living Legacy, I love and have loved it since I first saw you announce it. Man, what a great concept. I definitely could go into that one for a while, but let me kind of lead off here, maybe as we close this out. But if you were to leave a legacy of your own beyond the organization, Birthright Living Legacy, what would you hope people remember you for?
Honestly, to be a great husband, to be a great father. I mean, that was something that I did not have growing up. I didn't have the access to my father. And I hope that, outside, external of my family, because those are the most important memories. I want my children to remember that, daddy loved them, that I was doing everything that I did for them, but also that I made an intentional effort while on earth for them to see it. It wasn't just the legacy that we talk about. The reason the name Birthright Living Legacy is what it is because the birthright was the blessing. That was the passing on of everything that was great.
Yep.
And so, like, my son is named Marquess Jr. Whether you and him ever meet in a formal setting with me and him, I mean, he's 3 now, you guys have met, but he won't remember. But if you ever hear his name, the first thing is going to say is, "Oh, you're Mark. I know your father," which is what a birthright was. And then he would be able to bestow any blessings or any curses that I've created in my name. He would receive that. Now, the living legacy is to help you remember that you don't have to be dead in order to pass this on. So this is where you spend intentional time with your children to be able to focus on making sure that they understand the concept. And there's another secret that I do. We give every one of our fathers journals. This is a skill that I learned through a friend of mine. Mr. Clark taught me this. But when you write in a journal, what you don't do is, "Dear diary, let me tell you," no, but what you do write is, "Oh man, I cut up quotes, put in pictures and ideas and visions and dreams and buildings I want to own and places I want to travel, things about my kids that I love, things that drive me crazy, things that I learned, books that I've read." I put all that in journals, and I have roughly about 20 to 30 of these journals now. So when I pass, my kids will never have to ask, "How did daddy get to where he is? Who was it that they will inherit this stack of journals of intentional time that I was able to give to them." And even if you don't have your children or you're not interested in writing, there's ways to cheat. You can create a email account for your child.
Yeah.
Cool thing to do is create that email, hand it out to grandma, uncles, cousins, whoever, have them to be able to upload stuff to that account. And at 16 or 18, whenever you decide, you can give them that password and say, "Hey, here's your password. Here's all these things that your family has been sending to you." It could be pictures of themselves. It could be quotes. It could be Bible verses. It could be videos. It could be videos of them as kids. But if you ever pass or something ever happens to you, they will always have all those memories, and they will be able to see, man, somebody was intentional about thinking about me all this time. So birthdays, and you're like, "Hey, family, just want to remind you guys, her birthday or his birthday's coming up. Send something to the email. Here's the email address." Boop. Then send a birthday card, send something, whatever. Just whenever you think about it. Just you and your wife do something, record a video. Just, "Hey, today, you came home with a great report. You're 3 right now. You aren't going to remember this, but we wanted to tell you how proud we were that you learned how to make a macaroni necklace. It made me cry." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's
it
good.
won't mean anything to you. But when they get older and they are in those depressive states and the enemy is trying to lie to them and tell them they're not worthy, that they're not loved, that nobody wants them, that living legacy right there is going to change everything, because they're going to say, "No, enemy, you cannot lie to me. I see it. I see the time, the intentionality, and everything." Because like I said, when strong fathers create strong families, and strong families build strong communities. It's just what it is. When children have a present and engaged fathers, they have higher self-esteem, better academic performance, and lower risk of delinquency. And so when you start to look at all the adverse effects that come from fathers not being engaged, families not being a unit, like as it says in Malachi 4:6, it's plain and simple. Turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to the father, lest I strike this land with utter destruction. Where are we at right now? Utter destruction. Children hating fathers,
Yeah.
whatever you want to fill in the blank for. And so that's what we're trying to do, is just really help people to see that God created it this way for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not to hurt your feelings and tell you can't, whatever. What it is like, even if we take it like this, if you take that village principle and you take it outside of the context of the family, right? If you look at armed services, for profit or nonprofit, right? That same village principle works in everything. So if you look at the nonprofit structure, every nonprofit has what? A board. A board acts as your grandparents. Executives act as your parents. Then you have your people you serve, and then your employees, people, and that's your brothers, sisters, uncles, cousins, and neighbors, right?
Right.
You look at a school district. Every school district has a board, which is your grandparents.
That's
you
right.
have your teachers or your principals and your counselors as your parents, so on and so forth. Army, same thing. Prison, same thing. Every business, for-profits even, every for-profit has investors or shareholders, then your executives, then your so on and so forth. So, right? So then think about this. What happens if you take your CEO out of your company? Or what if you take your CFO out of the company, or COO out of the company? Or better yet, Stephen, what if we put both of those jobs on one person? Are you working in the business or on the business? And if you're working in the business, who's working on it? Who's running the company? You can't bring grandparents down. You can't bring a board member down to run the day-to-day. Maybe for a little while, but that's not sustainable over time, because that's not what the role that they were hired to take.
Right.
You also can't allow the teachers to run, because they don't have the context. The people you serve, they don't have the context of what it is you're trying to do. So this is what happens when you take a family or a community and you start removing the CEOs of each company, which is the households. And then you start to see the destruction of how a community, small business, the workforce, the businesses, the churches, all of that stuff starts to implode, because it's not set up properly to thrive. And that's the point.
That's good, man. Wow. That's a great example, great analogy. I think great picture for people to really get. I love that. Hey, let's, for those who are listening, watching, if they want to find out more information about Birthright Living Legacy, how do they get a hold of you?
So they can find us at www.birthrightlivinglegacy.com.org, brlivinglegacy.com.org. Either way, we're on all of the social media platforms. We have numerous news clippings that you can find us on. We're trying to get laws changed. We're also in the midst of our Father of the Year celebration. So we're starting to take, nominations for Father of the Year. So if you have a dad or a grandfather that you want to nominate, or somebody in your neighborhood that's been doing amazing, and they don't get the recognition that they deserve, and you feel like they should be doted upon with gifts and prizes and thousands of dollars cash, then we are the place for you. So find us at www.brlivinglegacy.org, or you can simply just call us, 918-922-9445. That is, once again, 918-922-9445. Call or text. We would love to connect with you.
And you have a podcast as well yourself. What's that podcast?
So our 4th season is called Legacy by Design, and this is an opportunity for us to really just start to go through and attack some of the things that we're talking about in the social media world, where people are making cool comments, or some are making crazy, outlandish things, and we just discuss them with our guest co-host Isaac Hansen. We also have Christian Hesty, who comes in, and so we have dads that are just coming in, and we talk about these points as we hear live on the air some of these concepts, and we just discuss them. But Birthright Living Legacy, you can go on our website, just look up podcasts. It'll take.
Yeah, I was on earlier. It's easy to access, real good, easy to navigate there. That's cool. Well, Marquise, so one of the last things we do for a podcast, have some little finish with some fun. And this is kind of what I call it popcorn, just basically spontaneous random questions for you. Not necessarily any connection to what we talked about so far.
I love it. I love it.
We're good there. All right. So you're sitting down to your favorite meal, comfort food, enjoyable food. What is that for you?
I would have to say it would be spaghetti and cornbread.
Oh.
And a cup of apple juice.
Nice. All right. I like that. I know you've got to travel a little bit around. What's your favorite place you got to travel to?
Favorite place that I've ever gotten to travel to was the Philippines, Baguio City.
Nice.
Yes.
Very nice.
Absolutely.
I have not been there before. I've heard it's wonderful though.
Oh yeah. $1 here was $46 there. I felt like a millionaire.
That's great.
Oh yeah, that was fantastic.
That's cool. What is somewhere that you'd like to go that you haven't been yet?
Dubai.
On your dream list.
Dubai.
Absolutely. Dubai. Okay. There you go.
Yes, absolutely.
What is the latest book that has been impactful for you? You're reading.
Oh man, the moment requires is a book that Jason Wilson is absolutely phenomenal. We're actually about to read it again as a book club book.
Oh, cool.
For the dads, because it's really just
Say the name again.
It's The Man the Moment Requires.
Okay.
And so it just talks about, manhood, fatherhood, being a comprehensive man. What does that take to be a comprehensive man?
That's good. Wow, that's awesome. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, Marquise. I thank you so much for coming on the podcast with me. And if you've liked this, enjoyed this as much as I have, please share this with your friends, comment on this. Let us know what you're watching, whether it's on pray.com or any of our other many platforms we're on. We're thankful that you got a chance to listen to this or watch this. And make sure you tell somebody about it. And go check out Marquise, all the resources he has on his website there. We'll have those in the show notes. You can get that as well. And as you continue to live your life, remember that you have a chance to impact somebody else's life around you for the better. Keep living good and help somebody out. We'll see you next time on the GEB America podcast.